Welcome back to the Aggression in Dogs Conference. All of the talks are pre-recorded and played right here on the main stage. If you're having technical difficulties with the live presentation, a YouTube link will be provided in the chat box where you can watch the presentation in another browser window. Professional closed captioning is available by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your video window. If you experience any other tech issues during the live presentation, please visit the info desk in the lobby or drop a question in the chat box. Information about continuing education credits, as well as a link to download PDFs of the presentation slides, can also be found at the info desk. Stick around for Q&A time right after, also here on the main stage. And just so you're aware, there might be a slight delay of about a minute or so in between the presentation and the Q&A session. If you have any questions for Jim, please enter them in the Q&A box so he can see them outside of the chat box. We also have lots of prizes to give away if you're attending the conference live. You can earn points for the contest by engaging in activities such as visiting our amazing exhibit hall. And don't forget to join us for our virtual cocktail party tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern time with our speakers here right on the main stage. So grab your favorite beverage and join us for the chat. And now for our next fascinating speaker. JIm Crosby is a retired police lieutenant and has professionally trained dogs since 1999. He holds a Master of Science degree in veterinary forensic medicine, a CPDT and CBCC, and Jim is recognized in and out of the court as an expert in the US and Canada on dangerous dogs, canine aggression, fatal dog attacks, and related issues. He has personally investigated over 30 fatal dog attacks on humans and has post-attack physically and behaviorally evaluated over 50 dogs that have killed humans. Jim is the director, Canine Encounter Training for the National Law Enforcement Center on Animal Abuse, and is the designer of the Law Enforcement Dog Encounter Training course, supported by the National Sheriff's Association and others. Jim teaches safe handling, evaluation, and rehabilitation of dangerous dogs, and the investigation of fatal and serious dog attacks to police, animal control agencies, and other across the US, Canada, Italy, the UK, Poland, and even Australia. Jim also authored 2 chapters in one of my favorite textbooks, Dog Bites, a Multidisciplinary Approach. I'm really excited for this talk after having Jim as a guest presenter for a defensive handling workshop I did with Trish McMillan, hosted by none other than Joanne Rectine, where Jim talked about the forensic side of dog bites, including how the shape of a dog's skull can really impact the outcome of a case. And I will say some of the content in Jim's talk may be disturbing to some viewers, so viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Crosby, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's session of the Aggression in Dogs Conference. I'd like to thank you for all coming, and I would like to also thank Mike Shikashio and Joanne Rectine for putting this conference together. I know we'd all rather be sitting around a table someplace enjoying each other's company directly, but unfortunately that hasn't worked out this year. What has worked out is we're able to go online and to actually reach out to a significantly larger number of people and to share the information all of us have learned from the various things we do with dogs and aggression issues. A little bit of background on me. I'm a retired police lieutenant here in Florida. I have worked as the director of 2 different municipal animal control agencies and have taught and worked with animal control agencies all across the United States, Canada, and indeed in the United Kingdom, in Australia, and other locations across the world. My specialty, if you will, is dealing with fatal dog attacks and dog bites with human victims. And I've had the opportunity to work probably more of those directly than pretty much anybody I've ever heard of. I've been on scene on nearly 50 cases where dogs have killed humans and have had my hands on to evaluate close to 60 dogs after the attack that have been involved in human fatalities. So I've got a little bit of experience that I'd like to share with you about dog evaluations and what we can do, what we can't really do, and what we can expect when we do these. The first question we have to answer really is, what is a behavior evaluation? Are we predicting? Are we looking for causes? What are we doing? Well, scientifically, an evaluation needs to be a few specific things. It needs to be objective. We need to try to walk into the evaluation putting our personal prejudices and likes behind us. We need to try and be specific. We need to know what it is we're evaluating and how to look for those characteristics. We would like our evaluations to be scientifically valid, to be dependable, to be something we can put our faith in. We would ultimately like them to be quantified, where we can look at an evaluation and go beyond the old standards of this is a good dog, this is a bad dog, ooh, that's a bad bite, ooh, that's not such a bad bite. And we want to be able to accurately describe the behaviors that we see, that we observe. We want to avoid emotionally and mentally charged words like friendly or mean or evil. We want to be objective, specific, and accurately describe what we see. Now, we're talking about scientific accuracy here for a moment, and as somebody who is a forensic scientist, I have to explain a couple of terms. For an evaluation, a test, we have to have a couple of different characteristics for it to meet the standard of scientific accuracy. So first, it has to be valid, and there's a process for validating tests. But basically that means that the test and the evaluation must be based on data, not feelings, not looks, not rumors, but data we have gathered. The testing must be what we call repeatable. That means that the same evaluation given to a dog by the same evaluator on more than one occasion should come out to be significantly the same when we look at the statistics and the reporting. If I evaluate the dog today, and then in a week I come back and give the same evaluation, my quantification should be very similar. The evaluations to be really valid and valuable to us should be what we call reproducible. That means, again, if I evaluate a dog today and Mike evaluates the same dog tomorrow and Joanne sees the same dog on next Thursday, all of us should come out with pretty much the same results, giving the same tests with the same animals. Now, the fact that these do not currently exist across tests makes temperament or predictive behavior testing really problematic. Dogs are choice-making organisms. They think, they decide. Their choices are informed by their environment, by the tester, by others present, and by each dog's experiences. Now, and if we're predicting, we're trying to look at adoptions, we have to try to guess what they're going to do in a different environment on a different day. Now, to have a really scientific evaluation, the way to test that would be to say, take 100 dogs, 50 of them that you've tested and found passed whatever your criteria are for passing, but 50 that passed and 50 that failed. Then you would have to mix up both groups and not label them as to which group they came from. Then we would have to go out and adopt both groups of dogs and sit back and watch and track how many of each group was successful or unsuccessful and either showed or didn't show the behaviors that we predicted. And then we'd have to have another set of scientists do that again. Obviously, we cannot ethically do this. We can't put animals that we have reason to believe are potentially dangerous or are not going to be good fits in adoption situations and purposefully put them out there to see if we were right. Now, so a behavior evaluation, we've talked a little bit about what it is, but what isn't a behavior evaluation? Well, it ain't whispering. There's no whispering involved. It's not ESP. It's not, I think your dog had a prior life as whatever. That's not what we're looking for. It's not just for a select few people. Evaluation should be applicable to anybody with basic experience with dogs. Now, evaluations at this point are not a guarantee and probably never will be because of the fact that dogs make choices. Some good, some not so good. Some that get them in trouble, some that make them the saviors. The other thing that I believe an evaluation is not is merely an observation. Observation is simply watching a dog and noting any interactions or behavior that the dog offers. Observation doesn't require contact with a dog. Observations are a really good place to start gathering information. That's what the field of applied behavior analysis is. We watch behaviors, we describe behaviors, we count behaviors. Now, that's very useful to establish a baseline, but that may or may not actually identify triggers or problem areas that need to be addressed. In the past, most evaluations of allegedly dangerous dogs or truly dangerous dogs have simply involved people standing back, basically on the other side of a fence, and watching the dog interact with, if they're lucky, some guy in a bite suit. Otherwise, the dogs are typically simply placed in a confined area and watched. In my view, which is mine, and your mileage may vary, and I'm not recommending this to everybody, to truly evaluate a dog, we need to have interaction between the dog and the evaluator. That means that especially with dogs that have shown dangerous behaviors before, we need to establish at least a short-term relationship with those dogs. That relationship involves give and take. It involves building trust. It involves the dog and the evaluator cooperating for at least a short time in order to find out where to go next. Now here I'm going to show you a video of an evaluation of a dog that was involved in a very serious bite case. The purpose to this evaluation was to see this dog's interaction with, at first, a relatively non-threatening stranger, and then with a strangely dressed and strange acting stranger to the dog. Neither of these people had the dog met. Now this involved setting up this consistent series of tasks that required interaction at varying levels. Now, understand, nowhere in an evaluation are we trying to provoke a dog to bite? Unlike people that are out there doing it for good TV, biting does not tell us much of anything. We should be skilled enough to see the signals and signs that a dog is approaching that level before they ever get there. We want to find sensitivities. We want to look for situations that can cause tension and or fear. We want to look for the dog's sociability, and we want to look at their reaction and their recovery from specific various stimuli. So let's watch this video.
Okay. We're
First approach.
Okay, move up about 3 steps. Okay.
Watch her reaction. This is a dog I have developed a short-term relationship with. Her behavior is informative. Now, as you can see, I set up a very controlled situation. Now, was this stressful for the dog? Sadly, it probably was. There is a reason to provide controlled stressors when doing an evaluation, because we want to find out what's wrong or where we can go with this dog. Her body language, however, was extremely interesting. When the first non-threatening stranger came up, she backed up and actually took refuge behind me. When the more overtly threatening stranger came up, she took her place beside me and went into defensive mode. That tells me that even with the short relationship that we had, this dog was capable of producing defensive behavior, and had the threat escalated, there was a good chance that she would engage with a person or persons that she saw as potential threats to the person she was with. That makes sense because the attack that she was involved in, wherein a woman in the UK nearly lost an arm, was a situation where a stranger approached her owner suddenly and without warning in the owner's own home. Does this mean this dog was okay to have done so? No. Nearly ripping someone's arm off is not a good thing to do. But in looking at causes and effects, looking at potential plans and potential reactions for this dog, this gave me specific information during this part of the evaluation that agreed with the evidence and the reported behavior that happened during the incident. So I was able to learn from this and to confirm suspicions based on the dog's reaction. Now, to do an effective evaluation, it's not good enough for us to just go, okay, I'm going to go evaluate this dog. We have to know why we're doing it. Otherwise, we're wasting our time and the dog's time. Are you evaluating for adoption purposes? And if you're doing it for adoption, are you trying to not only find the best match for the dog, but are you trying to predict behavior in the future in a different situation, with different people, with different environment, and after a period of time where the dog has had other exposure to people, situations, and built new experiences? Are we evaluating a dog for diagnosis, for treatment, or a training plan? That's one thing that I get involved in a lot, is looking for triggers and problems that can be addressed by understanding through evaluation what happened before and where we can go to improve that. The other thing that I do is evaluations, particularly with serious attacks and fatalities, looking for causes, those that were directly causing and those who were contributing causes. I'm looking very often for law enforcement to find out if there were human actions or a lack of human actions that set the situation, that set the stage for the particular outcome that happened. Sadly, across the United States, for the most part, dogs that kill human beings, no matter why, are destroyed. Frankly, I can't really disagree with that, because sadly, the people who would want such a dog are probably not people that we want having a dog that has shown the physical, mental, and emotional ability to take a human life. Why? Because we're speciest, and we tend to think that 2 legs outvotes 4 legs, and I tend to go along with that. However, when I'm looking into these, I'm looking for causes because I want to know and to be able to share the information about how the human-dog relationship goes so far sideways that the human loses their life. We kill dogs all the time. Sadly, you can go down to your local shelter and they probably do it on a daily basis. We as humans tend to be cruel and tend to injure and kill animals needlessly. However, when dogs who have socially evolved with us over the last 15,000 or more years wind up inflicting injuries that cause a human death, then to me, there is something worth looking at. So let's talk about specific types of evaluations. We're probably most familiar with evaluations done for the purpose of adoptions. And there's several of them that are very common. I'm sure we're all aware of them. There's the SAFER test. There's Assess a Pet. If you're in Australia, there's something called BARC. There is the Match Up or Pet Match. There are a number of different tools that are used to make adoption evaluations. All of these are trying to predict behavior in the future, behavior that may be very significantly affected by different circumstances and experiences and people and a host of other things. Prediction is always dangerous. We want to do it. We need to do it, but it's always dangerous because dogs are sentient, choice-making organisms. Their choices are intimately affected by their environment, their needs, and their experiences. What am I talking about needs? Look up the 5 freedoms. That summarizes the needs for pretty much all animals. The need for healthy food and clean water, the need to be able to express their normal behaviors. Look it up. It's very interesting, and it's a lot of the basis of modern animal welfare legislation today. When it comes to adoption evaluations, let's remember responses to specific or general circumstances can be changed. That's why we're all training. But we cannot necessarily reliably predict how long or what those changes are going to be over time. Here's another video I'd like you to watch, and I want you to pay attention to what you see. This is an evaluation of a dog that I met in the desert Southwest, and this is the beginning as we meet and manage to begin our relationship.
That's a good boy. Here's a good dog. Here's a good boy. That's my Zeus. That's a good Zeus. Come here.
Let's go to what happens a little bit later. This is about 10 minutes later when I place the dog back in the kennel after it had a fence fight conflict with another dog. The reaction here, I apologize for the language, but you'll understand why. This is the same dog in his kennel.
Knock it off! No, don't do that. Grab it! Grab his legs! Grab his legs! Grab his back legs! Get him out! Yes! God damn it! Get her! Thank you!
A little bit different situation than we saw in the first video. This obviously is a dog that we would not want to adopt out. Fortunately, the man who got grabbed by the boot at the end, who was actually his caretaker, the dog only grabbed onto his boot. I got bitten several times up the right leg, including the back of my calf, my knee, and my upper thigh, but due to the fact that I was wearing Kevlar protection, the only thing that happened to me was I had bruises and some abrasions from where the dog's teeth ran up and down my leg, causing my jeans and the overpants to rub against the skin. Difference in situations, same dog, same day, but this was after the dog had been over-aroused. Now, do we want to start trying to bait dogs into becoming over-aroused just to see what they do? No, we don't want to. Was this stressful? Heck yeah, I was stressed. I was extremely stressed. It was also stressful for the dog. The dog was reacting as a dog. And at the moment that I turned away from him to walk away, which I shouldn't have done, he had gotten just one too many bits of straw on the top of his load, and he reacted as a dog would react. Now, for treatment and training, we conduct evaluations all the time. Had that response been significantly lower, then there might have been room to train and try to treat the problems that that dog had. Now, treatment and training evaluations are not carved in stone. Again, they can change and they can vary based on the circumstances in which we see the dogs acting. These should be maps, charts, guides for healing, not sentences to confinement or death. Now, in the case we just saw, that was an extremely serious reaction. But the idea for treatment and training evaluations is not necessarily to predict behavior, but is to look and try and find a channel under the surface that we and our dogs can safely pass through. A treatment or training evaluation, if that's the purpose, is not pass-fail. Instead, even though there are many characteristics that factor in, we're trying to essentially use a flashlight to find our way through the dark. We can't guarantee any particular technique or treatment is going to work or isn't going to work. Instead, we can simply try and find a path. Here's a dog that I'm evaluating as part of a larger case, and one of this dog's issues was extreme fear of human beings. We've been able to get from her kennel into this room, but I want you to watch the give and take of behaviors, the give and take of signaling. I'm sitting on the floor here, looking away from her, keeping my body neutral, making myself small, and making it a point not to look directly at her, not to give a challenge. I'm trying to expand the relationship with this dog. Notice that I move away and she moves closer, not because I'm particularly tugging. When I try and tug, she resists, but she's responding to my position. She's responding to the cues I'm sending, but she's also giving me very solid information. She has a physical distance beyond which she cannot, at this point, deal with human contact. You can see in her body position, she's facing me, she's aware, she wants to make contact. As I move away, she is willing to move around with a little urging and to check out her surroundings, but she just can't make the transition to being fully social. This is, again, part of diagnosis for looking for potential answers and potential pathways to go forward in treatment. Yes, again, this is stressful. There are some who would say that this is aversive. However, as you note, I am keeping my body language as neutral as possible. I'm trying to present the least amount of stress to the dog, the absolute minimum necessary, and to then observe her behavior for the purpose of trying to build a bridge to help address this behavior problem. This was actually a very tragic case, and ultimately this dog, because of this and a number of other factors, was not placeable. She just had been treated too poorly up to that point in her life that the resources, the time, and the skills and abilities available were insufficient to meet her needs. Now, I also want you to notice in these evaluations, and I have been called out on it before, that I use a slip lead. Now, the slip lead is not used to choke anybody. However, when you're dealing with dogs, especially potentially dangerous dogs, or dogs in a shelter that you don't have any reliable history on, a slip lead is far safer to put on and to take off than trying to clip on to a collar. With this particular dog is a good illustration. Can you imagine the stress to that dog and the potential chances of this dog biting me if I had to chase the dog into a corner, lean over, grab it around the neck, and force a clip-on leash onto this poor girl? She would have totally freaked. And at that point, any further contact, even if she didn't bite me, would have been totally without value. So, in accordance to following the Lima principle, the least invasive, minimally aversive techniques in a shelter environment or with a dog that is potentially dangerous, the use of a slip leash can be used, or can be a method to safely control and interact with dogs. Do I ever use a catch pole to evaluate a dog? Absolutely not. A catch pole is always a last choice, usually for an animal control officer or shelter worker, to keep distance between them and a dog that they're trying not to be hurt by. They don't have the time necessarily to build a relationship. The reaction to a catch pole is pretty much universal. The dog panics, freaks, flips, bites the pole, bites at the loop. It's extremely, extremely traumatic to the dog. And again, it's my opinion from my experience that any behavior you see on a catch pole is a response to fear and a valid threat rather than any kind of predictive or diagnostic behavior. Now, what I get involved in a lot are causal investigations, be it civil or criminal. The case here was typical stupid human trick number XYZ. The person who was bitten in this case approached a dog who was trying his very best to warn this person to stay away. The person probably, although I don't know for sure, used that wonderful phrase, "Oh, I'm great with dogs. I'm like a dog whisperer." And at that point, the human reached up, grabbed the dog by the ears, and stuck his face nose to nose with the dog, with a predictable result. That cause was easy to put together. The dog was trying to communicate. The dog tried to tell this person, "I'm not comfortable with you." And when the person went to the extreme of closing the gap and forcing his way not only into the dog's space, but just about into his nose, the dog responded like a dog will. Why did the dog use his teeth? Because he can't ball up his fist and paste the guy in the face. Now, when I'm doing an investigation, I am looking for triggers for what may have caused the incident, whether it's fatal or not. Why did the incident occur? And can we see it from the dog's point of view? Well, heck yeah. Number one, we can all see why this occurred. We can see it from a dog's point of view. From the dog's point of view, this strange person approached directly, frontally, and rapidly, despite the dog giving warnings. The person violated the dog's space, reached out, restrained the dog when it was trying to warn the person not to, and then, with probably his mouth open smiling in a direct stare, came so close to the dog that the dog used the only tool he had to gain space. We know why this happened, and this particular case was easy to deal with. Some others, not so much. Now, the specific case we're going to talk about today is a case where the province of Ontario seized a group of adult dogs from a dog fighting ring. That's a picture of one of our dogs, and as you can see, the dog not only is lacking in proper body mass, but has extensive scarring, and the scarring is consistent with a dog fighter. The scarring are on the forelimbs and particularly around the face, the snout. There were some more scars on the chest. If you see a dog like this, this is probably an indication that this was a real fighting dog. This wasn't a bait dog, and that's a whole nother subject, but there really aren't such things. This was a documented fighting dog that law enforcement had a history on, had records on, and we knew was fighting. Now, the OSPCA, the Ontario SPCA, decided that this dog and 20 others, a total of 21 dogs seized in this case, had to be destroyed. Now, the initial group of dogs was evaluated by another group. That team did approve some of the dogs for placement. They felt that some of the dogs could be safely relocated. There were initially 21 dogs that were assessed for mandatory destruction. There were also 11 young dogs who were born in custody that had never been fought. However, they were from these bloodlines and had been bred and selected for fighting. When I got there, there were also 4 more dogs from an unrelated case that the OSPCA asked for input on. The way the time frame went on this is it took a while. The initial arrest and seizure was in the fall of 2015. The initial evaluations were done about a month later. However, from then to May of 2017, the case was fought out in court because that initial evaluation in 2015 said these 21 dogs are all unsafe and must be destroyed. Finally, after legal wranglings in May of 2017, the group behind trying to save as many as possible, that being a sanctuary known as Dogtails up in Ontario, got permission to bring me in as a second set of eyes, as a second evaluation. I have to thank Rob and Danielle Scheinberg, who were the driving force, the money, and the effort behind Dogtails, for all that they put out and all of the effort they put into getting us to that point of the second evaluation. I was able to evaluate those dogs, and my conclusions were very different from the initial team's conclusions. I'm going to talk about those conclusions here and the way we got to those different places. But in 2017, we were able to transfer a large group, in fact, almost all of those dogs, to training partners here in Florida. Amy Sadler, who many of you probably know, and her National Canine Center out in North Central Florida were instrumental, as was a group known as Pitt Sisters here in Jacksonville. Those training partners actually bore the weight of most of the training, even though I was involved with various stages of the training. They were the ones that did the day-to-day yeoman work, and they were the ones that were able to have significant effect on the outcomes. Now, I do want to explain that there were 2 dogs that I evaluated that I absolutely positively refused to sign off on. They were both horribly human aggressive, dangerously offensive, and one of the 2 I could not even get out of the kennel. That same dog had bitten one of the prior evaluations or evaluators 9 times before the helpers were able to separate the dog from the evaluator. Those dogs were both bona fidely dangerous. I will not sign off and allow a bona fidely dangerous dog to go back into a community, and neither should any of you. Now, the initial descriptions of the evaluation, they have a standard adult evaluation behavior program, or behavior evaluation program, I should say. And they test the dogs in a variety of social and environmental conditions. They have a grading system, and you can see on this slide, I'm not going to read it to you because there's too much information, but you can see the criteria that they use. Now, my evaluation, and again, I'm not going to read it, but my evaluation is based on a different philosophical position. My evaluation involves using recognized tools and using such as a combination of testing and examining where the problems lie for a particular dog. I don't consider them to be pass-fail. I consider them to be a diagnosis. I will note the behaviors, explain the significance of the behaviors, and then we have to examine the resources, skills, and abilities present as to whether those behaviors can be addressed safely and what prognosis there might be under those circumstances for those dogs. Now, this is a list of some of the tests that I do during a full evaluation. It takes time. It cannot be hurried. This is not something that I can cram in 26 dogs in an hour. It's also not magic. This is not my system that I'm trying to push on anybody. This is how I have found the ability to look for specific behaviors and behavioral triggers. The biggest difference between my evaluations and the other team's evaluations were in 2 specific areas. For me, I test, for instance, dog-dog sensitivity by using controlled, safe, minimal exposure to other live dogs, looking to not needlessly stress either group of dogs. The team before me used two tools that I do not use. Number one was the fake dog. Number two is the fake child. I have problems with both tools. Most of those problems are based on the fact that A, these are not dogs or children, and B, the fake versions do not give signaling and feedback of any kind to a dog other than perhaps threat signals. With the fake dog, for instance, the dog stands stiffly, it looks straight ahead, its ears don't move, its tail doesn't move. The most that you're going to see is a person hopping a dog up and down weirdly, like dogs don't move. That has to, in my mind, affect the potential outcome. And my study here was focused on whether the fake dog should be considered in this population of dogs, in this environment. And these, remember, were bona fide fighting dogs with fighting histories, whether that fake dog was diagnostic and valid or not. Now, comparing the reports that I generated versus the report the other team generated, you'll see some differences, and I want you to keep those in mind as you go forward and do whatever evaluation you're going to do. For instance, their evaluation states the dog is social and sweet with people. Okay, social tells me something, but sweet is not informative. The dog is a little submissive at times. Please, haven't we gone far enough beyond the old dominant submissive dichotomy to start just simply ignoring those terms? We're not dogs, they're not people. Long story, long discussion. Again, the dog followed the tester submissively during tug. Submissive does not quantify a behavior. The dog didn't acknowledge the toddler doll as a child. Wow, imagine that. The dog didn't think the plastic toy doll was a person. She also said she was submissive during scolding. Was she submissive, or was the behavior observed during scolding a reaction to an aversive stimulus? I argue for the second. It was a response to an aversive stimulus that, as a fighting dog, she had probably been exposed to before this evaluation with negative results. The ultimate decision for this dog was, we believe this dog would be unsafe to place in a community. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of mine, but you'll see that my evaluation, I've at least tried, and I still haven't got it all down perfectly, but I have tried to limit opinion statements and stay to as objective and quantifiable characteristics as I can. I do say that this dog did have issues. The last couple of lines that are highlighted, dog number 13 did, however, give clear and unmistakable warnings when she was pressed towards her behavioral sensitivities. That's great. The dog communicated. It gave warnings. Dog 13 should be considered for rehabilitative training, focusing on her potential food sensitivity and human socialization, and, in my opinion, had a good prognosis for substantial improvement. I didn't say that I was guaranteeing she was going to be fine, nor did I say that she needed to be killed. Well, the proof is in the pudding, as they say, so let's see what happened with her. After being placed, first with some one-on-one training and then in a prison-based training program, Dog 13 earned the class, which of course is the Association of Professional Dog Trainers version of the American Kennel Club Canine Good Citizen. She earned a class title of PhD, the highest you can learn, or that you can earn, which requires not only excellent manners and no aggression shown to dogs or people, but requires learning tricks. She also earned an American Kennel Club Good Citizen title. She is now a working service dog for a disabled veteran who is also a former firefighter. Now, look at the picture here. What does it tell you? It tells me that she really doesn't like that goofy hat. But this dog that was once determined to be unsuitable for placement in a community succeeded greatly. Much of that decision was based on subjective materials, and if we go back to the previous slide, when she saw the fake dog, she rushed at it and grabbed its head without hesitation. She released and grabbed the stomach. Then she grabbed the head, bit hard, and shook. She released on her own when the dog stopped moving, the fake dog. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds like toy behavior from a very energetic dog. And to this day, my understanding is she still likes to grab her squeaky toys and shake them around and dissect the squeaker out of them. Are we surprised? No, she's a dog. Let's examine now the overall results post-rehabilitation of the dogs that I tested. That includes the 21 original dogs and the extra dogs that were not evaluated by the first team. Out of a total of 41 dogs, which was 21 plus 11 plus 4, but minus a couple that were put down for medical reasons, and minus the 2 that I refused to take. Out of 41 dogs I evaluated, 33 of the 41, in other words, 80.5% of them, were rehabilitated and placed. Now, one was euthanized for behavior. He could not be fixed. One of those that I evaluated, or that were in part of the original 21 at least, was killed by another dog due to the inadequate kennels that they were kept in, and another dog got over her kennel and killed her in kennel while in protective custody. One dog was euthanized for unforeseen medical issues. This dog literally went to a home and was running around in the backyard and had a cardiac arrest from a congenital issue that we had no idea of. One dog has been moved and is still living in a sanctuary situation for safety while more training is ongoing. And as of the last time I checked, 4 of the dogs are still being rehabilitated at the National Canine Center with Amy Sadler and her crew to give them every chance possible. But again, 80% plus of the dogs were successfully rehabilitated in place, and this includes all of those dogs that were adjudged to be too dangerous to be out in public. So what are these dangerous dogs doing now? Well, dog number 39 was rated as being too dangerous to release. The OSPCA said at the time that because these were fighting dogs, they were not pets, and that their focus was only to kill. Well, let's see what this dog is killing. She's killing it as a police officer. Dog 39, who is now known as Canine Officer Dallas, Although she was not evaluated by the first team, she was one of the offspring from that bloodline taken during the fighting seizures. And dog number 39 at work today has a number of very successful, very large drug seizures for the department in Virginia with whom she works. She is a success story. He is a success story. Dallas has worked with his handler and continues to work every day on the streets, keeping people and other animals safe. So, in conclusion, and again, I'm going to let you read these yourself, but the initial assessments were highly dependent on the fake dog test, and were found that all of these dogs in the original 21 were a significant danger to the community and recommended for destruction. Yet, after rehabilitation and follow-up, 65.1% of the original 21 were successfully placed. 4 more are law enforcement dogs, and 2 of them are actually service dogs. So when you add the law enforcement dogs, the service dogs, the adopted dogs, all together, 80.5% of this population of dogs were successful in various ways. Only one of the primary dogs, the first 21, that aggressed toward the fake dog was euthanized due to continued aggressive response after the dog was given a chance at rehab. None of the dogs that were placed in homes, nor the working dogs, have any reports of biting humans or fighting with other dogs. Again, 2 of the original dogs I refused before we took them because of their human-focused aggression, and they were euthanized without leaving their confinement. In this case, the fake dog test gave a false positive error rate of 80.5%. It was wrong 80.5% of the time. Therefore, in this population of dogs, in my experience, under these circumstances, the fake dog test is non-predictive of future behavior and is something that, although we should test further, at this point, we should look at very skeptically. Now, back to evaluation in general. Is evaluation magic, or is it even science? Well, we've discussed the issues for having a reliable test, and we have to admit across the board that reliability varies so much and accuracy varies so much that we have not reached a scientific level of validity yet. Are they valid? As Pete Townsend and the boys say, no. Their evaluations are not magic. It depends on who you ask as to how good they are. The skill of evaluating and assessing current and future behavior is complicated at best. There are a lot of very good researchers working on the problem all over the world. That research ranges from using functional MRIs and maps of neurotransmitters to decoding micro expressions, from theories of anti-anthropomorphism and anti-anthropocentrism, say those real quick, to looking at core emotions such as what Dr. Jaak Penskep calls rage and fear or grief. We're busier than ever trying to figure out what makes dogs tick, physically and emotionally, how they perceive, how they interpret, and how they make decisions. We've come a long way from Skinner and his boxes, and a long way from Pavlov, if the name rings a bell. We have a long way to go. There is a lot of literature out there that addresses where we have come so far. Here's a list of just a handful of articles, and I would recommend that you reach out and read and take in as much as possible as you make decisions in your own practices. Some of these tools, some of the articles, the tools they illustrate are about maps that we have so far, but we do not have a single map to follow. As they say in the scientific fields, there's a need for further research. However, we need to also make sure we're asking the right questions. Are we looking for prediction? Are we looking for treatment? Are we looking for causes? We have to ask the questions, and the better our questions get, the better our answers are going to be. I'm certainly going to continue asking my questions. So this is me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention. I can be contacted fairly easily. I have my regular email address and also my email address at the University of Florida, where I am finishing my PhD. I'm located in Jacksonville, Florida, but I would ask that if you have especially a life-threatening or fatal attack, please reach out to your prosecutors or your animal control or your police and have them give me a call as early in the process as possible. Number one, I'm still gathering data and I'm going to continue. I want to look at the circumstances. I want to evaluate as many dogs as possible and gather that information, so the more we learn, the more we can address the problems that lead to these issues, and maybe, just maybe, we can save a few lives. Thank you very much, and I believe question and answer will start in just a flash here. Bye-bye.